Ichigo vs Zaraki. This battle wasn't just another clash between ordinary fighters within the Soul Society. It was one of Kubo's greatest masterpieces, drawn with his very own hands. This fight carried for more than what appeared on the surface, guys. It was a fight filled with symbols, foreshadowing and hidden meanings at what was yet to come. At first glance, many might see it as a mere brawl between a reckless Shinigami and an enraged one. But the truth runs much deeper. Zaraki's defeat wasn't by coincidence, and Ichigo's sudden power surge wasn't just a random spike in strength. The entire thing was rooted in the very mechanics of their powers, and in the mysterious bond between the soul and the sword. And Kubo brilliantly illustrated this concept throughout the manga, making that battle the foundation upon which massive ideas were later built, such as Old Man Zangetsu using the shadows to drag Ichigo to his inner world, the Quincy power to heal his wounds, and the very first mention of the term Asauchi, the nameless blade whose true nature wouldn't be revealed until hundreds of chapters later. But today we're not talking about this subject because we have talked about it in several videos. This time we're diving into another character equally important, someone who's been right before our eyes all along, yet we never understood his true nature until he revealed his real face. Zangetsu, the Shinigami version, so to speak. This guy, guys, can be seen as a true bearer of Ichigo's sword, the purest reflection of his Shinigami power. After this moment, Ichigo was no longer just a Shinigami swinging his blade. He began for the very first time to truly feel what it meant to be a wielder of Zangetsu, to touch the essence of the power that he had lived within him from the start, a power he couldn't properly use before, one that was simply waiting for the right moment to awaken. All these threads connect together, guys, and it all began right there. That battle, which seemed simple at first glance, was actually the starting point of Ichigo's true journey, the journey to understanding himself and his sword. Because guys, if you pay close attention, you will notice something. Before Ichigo entered his inner world for the second time during his fight with Zaraki, he had no real connection with his Shinigami powers. And when I say real connection, I mean a spiritual communication with his Zanpakuto, which represents the very core of a Shinigami's power, the sword that embodies its user's soul and manifests their inner strength. But here's the crazy part. When you think back to chapter 63, the appearance of the old man Zangetsu was actually a huge clue, an early sign that this being wasn't Ichigo's true Zanpakuto, because at that point, Ichigo hadn't fully awakened his Shinigami powers yet. That's why Hollow Ichigo, the real Zanpakuto, didn't appear his inner world back then. The only one there was the old man, acting as a mediator, the face Ichigo's Quincy side wanted him to see. And that's exactly why, when Ichigo's Shinigami powers finally awakened and he saw the name of his true Zanpakuto, the old man appeared outside his inner world and gave him the name Zangetsu. And I personally believe the old man did that intentionally, because if he had let Ichigo enter his inner world by himself at that time, he might have faced or even seen White or Hollow Ichigo, the true Zanpakuto, the other side of his Shinigami powers. And that right there is the key to understanding what really happened later during his fight with Zaraki. If you think about it, throughout the entire story, Ichigo never entered his inner world the way other Shinigami do. Why? Because he didn't know the proper way to connect with his Zanpakuto. The known method, Jinzin, wasn't something Ichigo learned until much later when he trained with his father Isshin. Every time before that, his entry to his inner world happened naturally, as if someone else was pulling him in. And one of the most important of those times was during his battle with Zaraki. The old man, realizing Ichigo didn't know how to do it himself, took the initiative and dragged him into his inner world. And there, for the very first time, Ichigo came face to face with his true Zanpakuto, Hollow Ichigo. Inside that world, Ichigo witnessed strange, cryptic signs he couldn't understand back then. Signs related to the true meaning of having Zangetsu and the correct way to use a sword that reflects one's soul. The first thing that stands out in that moment, guys, is the sheer speed. The way he snatched Zangetsu right out of Ichigo's hand wasn't just a fighting move, it was a message. You still don't have control over your power. Ironically enough, guys, when the old man later introduces White to Ichigo, he tells him you'll have to fight yourself to obtain Zangetsu. And the phrase yourself instantly reminds us of the line "the blade is me," a line that directly symbolizes the connection between Ichigo and White, because Hollow Ichigo or White, as Ichigo's true Zanpakuto, took Ichigo's very form. So even metaphorically, the phrase "the blade is me" fits perfectly. But honestly guys, the scene that pushed me to make this video, the one that inspired me to make this entire video, was that exact moment when White attacks using Zangetsu, or to be more accurate, it was the moment when Zangetsu himself attacks Ichigo. I mean, take a close look at Ichigo's expression in that moment. The pure terror in his eyes, the sheer helplessness he felt before his own power. He couldn't block Zangetsu's strike, couldn't even push him back, instead he was the one being overwhelmed. But then guys, when Ichigo lifted his head and looked forward, for the first time ever, he saw Zangetsu, not as a sword, but as a living entity, a rival standing before him, and there, a fragment of Zangetsu's true power revealed itself. An immense spiritual pressure erupted, forming the shape of a hollow mask. And that mask wasn't some random visual effect, it was a clear manifestation of Ichigo's Shinigami power, a mark that would later become his signature symbol in every major battle he would fight. The sheer amount, guys, of spiritual energy flowing from Zangetsu's blade made Ichigo realized just how unique his Zanpakuto really was. As he once said himself, Zangetsu's Ryatsu was so dense it burned the air around it. It was so overwhelming that Ichigo described Zangetsu as a monster. The contrast was so huge that the Asauchi in Ichigo's hand felt like a mere wooden sword. That's why guys, I really like that scene. It's as if Kubo gave us a glimpse of how Ichigo's enemies must feel when facing him. If you remember, there was a similar moment near the end of the story, when Ichigo confronted Yuaba. At that time, Ichigo had reached his full power. His Ryatsu was manifesting visibly around him, almost identical to the vision he once saw of Zangetsu himself. Even Yuaba described Ichigo's spiritual pressure as so immense it began to take physical form beside him. That's why I often ask myself this question: what if Ichigo had learned White's fighting style, his techniques, his approach? No doubt, Ichigo's skill level would have been on an entirely different plane. Because guys, when you watch the fight between Ichigo and Hollow Ichigo carefully, the difference in fighting mastery is unbelievable. White or Hollow Ichigo used every ounce of Zangetsu's potential, to the point where even Ichigo was shocked. At one point, Hollow Ichigo held Zangetsu by the cloth-wrapped head to attack, something Ichigo himself had never even thought of doing. In that scene, Hollow Ichigo was basically acting as the old man's counterpart, a teacher and a guide, but in a completely different way. Violent, yes, but effective. He even described the Zanpakuto as a mighty sword, and then shared the exact same concept that Uetsu Nimaya would later explain, the idea of the bond between a Shinigami and their Zanpakuto. That was yet another clue, because who else could explain such profound truth about a Zanpakuto except the Zanpakuto itself? When Hollow Ichigo said, "Can you really become best friends with someone just by knowing their name?" It was one of those lines that completely changed Ichigo's understanding of his relationship with his Zanpakuto. The fascinating thing, guys, here is that Hollow Ichigo was emphasizing that Zangetsu's power is immense, but Ichigo had to understand it on a deeper level. However, because the old man's lie pretended to be Zangetsu, Ichigo's understanding remained incomplete. He thought that all he needed to do was to understand the old man, nothing more. Meanwhile, he saw Hollow Ichigo as nothing but an obstacle, a dangerous power to be suppressed or destroyed. That is why, guys, when the old man saw that Ichigo was beginning to understand the true nature of the relationship between a Shinigami and the Zanpakuto, starting to connect it with his Shinigami power, he reversed the blades. That move instantly reminded me of Uryu's ability to reverse things. I know it's not exactly the same, but the concept was really clever. This pattern of Ichigo's hollow mastery over Zangetsu is something Kubo emphasized even later, during Ichigo's second visit to his inner world. Kubo even used the same chapter titles, Black and White, and the Dark Side of the Universe. And this time, Ichigo finds Hollow Ichigo holding Zangetsu once again. And he reaffirms the same truth: the more you try to draw power from Zangetsu, the more I become the dominant force. And that logic is absolutely correct. After all, Zangetsu's true strength comes directly from Ichigo's Shinigami power. You can also notice Hollow Ichigo's brilliance in combat, especially when it comes to using Bankai and even using parts of his body as weapons. First, a single hand was enough for him to block Ichigo's full force attack, the one Ichigo launched using both hands to add weight and power to his sword, and then Hollow Ichigo blocked Ichigo's Getsuga Tensho with his bare hand, only to immediately counter with a Getsuga Tensho of his own, fired point blank at Ichigo's body. And that is why I love Hollow Ichigo so much. I'm obsessed with his fighting style. You can't get bored watching him fight. I know that fighting styles are like fingerprints, they reflect the fighter's soul, but Hollow Ichigo is truly one of the most skillful Zanpakuto spirits ever shown, perfectly blending raw power with refined technique, all backed by the massive spiritual power of Ichigo. That is why, guys, as I said before in several videos, I really want to see how Hollow Ichigo would fight using dual swords. Sure, Ichigo's relationship with his Zanpakuto has evolved and we'll never see a fight under the same old conditions again, but I'm certain, absolutely certain, that Hollow Ichigo's dual blade combat style would be on a whole different level. In the end, guys, what do you think about Hollow Ichigo's fighting style? Tell me, guys, your opinions in the comments and see you in my next video.